Here we are in our rollViewController.swift file, and the first thing I want you to do is delete any code that's in the rollTheDice method. Here in this method, we're going to present our custom view controller. So how are we going to do that? We might as well start by trying to present it the same way we did the UIKit view controllers. So in that case, we just construct our dice view controller and then present it. Oh, but also we need to set those dice values, so we'll do that in these two lines. Okay, let's see if it runs. Okay, so far so good. Oh. Got a problem. What does the console say? Okay, fatal error, unexpectedly found nil while unwrapping an optional value. Okay, so the green highlighting is pointing to the first die property. And we know if the first die property is nil, that's going to cause a runtime error, because first die is an implicitly unwrapped optional. So why is first die nil? If we look back at our object diagram, we're reminded that these outlets to our views were created in Storyboard. We created this instance of Dice View Controller without Storyboard. So that means these outlets, these views, and this action don't exist yet. So that's a problem. So in order to get rid of this error, we need to get a fully assembled Dice View Controller from Storyboard. So let's close the console and then go back into our rollViewController.swift file. So here's where we were presenting our Dice View Controller before in the rollTheDice method. You go ahead and delete this reference to the Dice View Controller, and we're going to replace it. In this line, first we get a reference to a Storyboard object, and then we ask for the Dice View Controller by name, using its Storyboard identifier. Let's take a closer look at this new method, instantiate view controller with identifier. This identifier is just a string. It's the name that you give the view controller in Storyboard. So let's double check that we actually set that name in Storyboard. So if I open up the Storyboard file and click on the Dice View Controller, I can look in the Utilities pane and click on the Identity Inspector. In the Identity Inspector, right here, you'll see the Storyboard identifier, and we can see that yes, indeed, it is set to Dice View Controller. Just for kicks, I'm going to go ahead and delete this Storyboard ID and the class ID and see what would happen if you forgot to put the name of the view controller. Now let's try and run it. Okay, so it compiles fine. Roll the dice. Uh-oh. Terminating with uncaught exception. Okay, so if you get one of these exception errors, what you want to do is scroll up to the top of the console, and then you'll get more information about the error. And here we can see Storyboard doesn't contain a view controller with identifier Dice View Controller. So that's pretty much what we expected. But we know how to fix that. We'll just go back into Storyboard and reset the name. There, that ought to do it. Now let's go back into our rollViewController.swift file, because I want to point out one more thing about that instantiate view controller with identifier method. What's going on at the end of this line here, where it says Dice View Controller as Dice View Controller? If you alt-click on this method, you can see that it returns any object. That's why we need to cast that returned object as a Dice View Controller.